My name is Krenth, by the way, third claw of the Station Security Division, which is a fancy way of saying I stand around looking important while scanning incoming vessels for contraband. Mostly I find illegal fruits. Sometimes someone tries to smuggle in a pet that violates about 47 different quarantine protocols. Exciting stuff, right? Look, I have worked station security for 17 cycles now, and let me tell you something. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, ever happens at Veretis Diplomatic Station. We get delegates from 100 different species. They argue about trade routes. Someone complains about the cafeteria serving the wrong atmospheric mix, and then everyone goes home. Boring, safe, predictable. So anyway, there I was on landing platform 7, running my scanner over the newest batch of arrivals, and that is when the human delegation showed up. Now humans had only been part of the Galactic Council for about 3 cycles at this point, so they were still kind of a novelty. Cute little things. Really. Soft skin, no natural weapons to speak of. Barely any muscle density compared to most species. They looked like they would blow over in a stiff breeze. Then I noticed her. This particular group had 12 humans total. Most of them were dressed in those weird matching outfits they call suits, all talking amongst themselves, carrying data pads, looking very official and very unimpressive. Standard diplomat behavior. I scanned them, found nothing more dangerous than some caffeine pills, which apparently humans need to function properly. Weird. But whatever. She was standing at the back of the group, separated from the others by maybe 3 body lengths. Average height for a human, which meant she came up to about my mid-torso, dark hair, pulled back tight. Simple gray clothing. Nothing fancy. She carried one small bag, kept her eyes down and did not say a single word to anyone. While the rest of her species chattered away like excited younglings, she just, well, existed quietly in her own space. I ran the scanner over her. Victoria Kane, the readout said. Diplomatic attaché. Nothing unusual in her luggage. Nothing suspicious in her bioscan. Clean record. Boring. I waved the group through, made a note in my log about their arrival time and went back to hoping someone would at least try to smuggle something interesting. Maybe a banned delicacy from the Outer Rim, or some mildly illegal technology. Something to break up the monotony. Yeah, I really should have paid more attention to that scan. The trouble started 3 hours later, in Conference Hall Sigma, and of course it involved the Vraxians. Because why would anything ever be simple? For those of you not familiar with Vraxian culture, let me paint you a picture. They are big, like seriously big. 8 feet tall on average, built like walking tank units with exoskeletons that can deflect small arms fire. Their entire society revolves around strength, combat prowess, and making sure everyone else knows how tough they are. Subtle, they are not. Their delegation leader was a real piece of work named Thokrau, commander in their warrior caste, covered in battle scars he probably showed off at parties, and possessing exactly 0 diplomatic skills. I was stationed outside the conference hall, but the doors were not exactly soundproof, so I heard everything. It started with the standard negotiations, trade agreements, shipping lane access, boring stuff. Then Thokrau decided he was bored too. Apparently. I winced. Oh boy, here we go. These humans. His voice boomed through the door, loud enough that I swear the wall panels vibrated. The council admits children to negotiate with warriors. One of the human diplomats, an older male named Frederick Chen, tried to smooth things over. Commander Thokrau, we assure you that our delegation is fully qualified. Qualified? Thokrau laughed, and it sounded like rocks grinding together. You are soft, weak. Your species has no natural defenses, no strength, no honor in combat. You sit behind your technology and pretend to be equals. Through the door's window panel, I could see the human delegation getting uncomfortable. They shifted in their seats, exchanged glances. Did that thing humans do where they smile even though they are clearly not happy? All of them except Victoria Kane, that is. She sat perfectly still at the far end of the table, hands folded, expression completely neutral. like she was listening to a weather report instead of being insulted by a 8-foot-tall murder machine. Thokral noticed her stillness. Of course he did. Predators always notice the quiet ones. Right? Wrong, as it turns out, but I am getting ahead of myself. You there. He pointed one massive claw at Victoria. The silent female. Why do you not speak? Are you frightened? Do you hide behind your louder companions like a juvenile behind its parent? Nothing. She did not even blink, just kept that same calm, neutral expression on her face. This, apparently, made Thokral angry. His crest flared up, which in Vraxian body language means he is about 2 seconds from doing something aggressive and stupid. Frederick Chen stood up, his face doing that thing human faces do when blood rushes to the surface. Commander, I must protest this. Pathetic, he snarled. Your delegation sends a mute child to important negotiations. This is the weakness of humanity on full display. Sit down, old male. Thokral waved him off dismissively. Before I forget the protocols that protect you here. The other humans looked nervous now. Really nervous. They kept glancing at Victoria, like they were expecting something, or maybe hoping for something. But she just sat there, quiet as ever, hands still folded. Still boring, I thought. Still wrong. Now, diplomatic protocols are pretty clear about physical contact. Specifically, the rules state that you do not initiate it without permission, especially not in a threatening manner. Thokral apparently decided those rules were more like suggestion. He pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the floor with a metallic screech that made my antenna twitch. Then he stomped around the table toward the human delegation. Each footstep sounded like a hammer hitting the deck plating. The humans tensed up, all except Victoria, who still had not moved. Perhaps, Thokral said, leaning down over Frederick Chen close enough that the human probably felt his breath. Your species needs a demonstration of what real strength looks like, so you understand your place in the hierarchy of the galaxy. Frederick, to his credit, did not back down. Commander, you are violating protocol. Return to your seat immediately. Or what? Thokral laughed again. You will file a complaint? Write a strongly worded letter? This is exactly what I mean. No spine, no courage. He reached out and shoved Frederick's shoulder. Not hard enough to injure, but definitely hard enough to move the human backward a few steps. Definitely hard enough to violate about 6 different station regulations. I reached for my comm unit, ready to call for backup, but something made me hesitate. Professional curiosity, maybe, or stupidity. Probably stupidity. Thokral turned his attention back to Victoria. He walked over to her, deliberately invading her space, towering over her seated form like a mountain over a pebble. She tilted her head up slightly to maintain eye contact, but otherwise did not react. The other Vraxian delegates were watching with obvious approval, their crests raised in what passes for entertainment in their culture. A few other species representatives, who were observing the negotiations, had gone very quiet, very still. Nobody wanted to be the next target. Nothing to say? He growled. No protest? No fear response? Perhaps humans are even weaker than I thought. Perhaps you are simply broken. That is when I noticed it. Just for a second. When her collar shifted from the contact, I saw the edge of something on her neck. A tattoo. Maybe. Dark lines. Partial image. Gone as soon as her collar settled back into place. Probably nothing important. Victoria's head moved slightly with the impact. Maybe half an inch. Then she returned to her exact previous position, hands still folded on the table in front of her. Expression still completely neutral. He reached out with one massive claw and flicked her shoulder. A casual gesture. Dismissive, meant to demean rather than harm. The kind of thing a bully does when they know their target cannot fight back. Fascinating, Thokral said, his voice dripping with contempt. It does not even register offense, like a servitor drone. Perhaps this is what humanity truly is. Automatons, pretending to be sentient beings. Definitely something important, but again, I am an idiot. The other humans were looking at each other now, having some kind of silent conversation with their eyes. One of them, a younger female named Lisa Park, leaned over and whispered something to Frederick. He shook his head slightly, a clear no gesture. That is when the younglings walked in. Thokral straightened up, clearly disappointed that he had not gotten the fear response he wanted. This is beneath me. Negotiating with creatures that cannot even defend their own honor. We should. Victoria herself? Still nothing. She could have been carved from stone for all the reaction she showed. Her breathing remained steady and even. Her hands had not moved a millimeter. Her eyes tracked Thokral with the kind of calm focus you usually see in security cameras. Empty. Neutral. Recording. See, what I had not mentioned earlier is that this particular diplomatic session included a youth education program. Young delegates from various species were supposed to observe the proceedings, learn about galactic politics, the usual idealistic nonsense that never actually prepares anyone for the reality of bureaucratic nightmares. 3 human younglings, probably around 12 cycles old in their development, entered through the side door with their chaperone. Thokral noticed them immediately. His eyes locked onto the smallest one, a young male holding a datapad covered in colorful stickers. And then, because the universe apparently has a sense of humor, Thokral decided to make an example. They looked excited, curious, completely unaware they had just walked into a situation that was about to go very, very badly. Ah, more humans, he said, moving toward the younglings. Even smaller, even weaker. Tell me, little creature, does your species teach you anything about strength? About survival? The chaperone tried to step between them, but Thokral simply moved her aside with one arm. Gently, technically non-violently, but the message was clear. The youngling backed up against the wall, datapad clutched to his chest, eyes wide. Perhaps I should demonstrate what happens to weak species in a hostile galaxy. Thokral reached toward the child. A lesson your elders clearly failed to. Now, I have seen a lot of species stand up from chairs. It is not usually noteworthy, but something about the way she rose from that seat made every single being in that room go silent. It was smooth, controlled, like a machine activating, like a weapon being drawn from its holster. He never finished that sentence. Victoria Kane stood up. Her right shoulder carried a tattoo, a wolf's head rendered in stark black lines, mouth open in a silent howl. But it was not just any wolf design. The image was surrounded by specialized markings, symbols I did not recognize immediately, and underneath in clean lettering, wolf mark. She reached up with both hands and removed her jacket. Slowly, carefully, folded it once and placed it on the chair behind her. Underneath, she wore a simple sleeveless gray shirt, and that is when everyone saw what had been hidden. Frederick Chen went pale, actually pale, like all the blood drained from his face. Lisa Park whispered something that sounded like a prayer or maybe a curse. The other human delegates suddenly looked very, very concerned, but not for themselves. My station security panel started beeping. Atmospheric pressure anomaly detected. No, wait, that was not right. The pressure had not changed. Something else had. The air in the room felt different, heavier, like gravity had increased by a fraction, just enough to notice. Victoria spoke for the first time since arriving at the station. Her voice was quiet, calm, the kind of calm that predators use right before they strike. "Commander Thokral," she said, each word precise and clear, "step away from the child." It was not a request. It was not a suggestion. It was a statement of fact. A description of what was about to happen whether Thokral cooperated or not. Thokral turned to face her, and I swear I could see confusion on his face. Here was this small, soft human, barely half his size, with no visible weapons, no armor, no anything, and she had just given him an order. Him, a Raxian commander who had fought in 17 campaigns and survived challenges from warriors twice his size. He laughed. "Or what, little human? You will file a complaint? Wait. What?" Victoria took one step forward. The deck plating under her foot made a sound. Not loud, just a tiny stress indicator. Metal compressing slightly under focused pressure. My sensors registered it. Microfracture detected in deck section Sigma 7. She tilted her head slightly, and when she spoke again, her voice had dropped even lower. Still calm, still quiet, somehow worse because of it. I am going to give you 5 seconds to step away from that child, she said. After that, Station Medical is going to need to reassemble you from component parts. Your choice, Commander. The temperature in the room dropped. I checked my sensors. No, the temperature had not actually changed, but it felt colder. Frederick Chen put his face in his hands. Oh no, Lisa Park muttered. He does not know, he has no idea. 5, Victoria said. Folkrell's crest flared to full extension. You dare threaten me? You? I will. I pulled up the human delegation files, bypassed the basic diplomatic credentials, and went straight for the deep background checks. The ones that show military service, criminal records, classified clearances, all the stuff that usually gets redacted for privacy reasons. But station security has override codes for emergencies, and this definitely qualified. Victoria Kane's file loaded. Okay, so this is the part where I finally did my job and started accessing the security database. Better late than never, right? Wrong. So very wrong. I should have done this hours ago, but hindsight is perfect, and I am an idiot. We have established this. Then it kept loading and loading. The scroll bar on my screen was getting smaller as more data populated. Page after page of service record, commendations, mission logs, most of it with big red classified stamps across it. I started speed reading, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I scrolled faster. Wolf Mark, the file said, Tier 1 Special Operations Unit, Human Military, acceptance rate 0.03%, training duration 18 months, attrition rate 94%, operational deployments 87 missions, 0 failures. 4, Victoria said in the conference room. Personnel specialization high-value target extraction, counterinsurgency operations, unconventional warfare, close-quarters combat expert, advanced hand-to-hand combat instructor level, certified in 47 different martial disciplines including 3 we do not have names for. 3, Victoria said. Thokral was still posturing, still standing between Victoria and the youngling. His fellow Vraxians were encouraging him with clicking sounds that meant approval in their language. They thought this was funny. They thought this tiny human was bluffing. I found Victoria Kane's personal combat record. 18 years of active service, confirmed eliminations. The number was redacted, but the designation said high. Survived 6 situations classified as near certain death scenarios. Hand-to-hand combat victories against species with superior strength. 12 documented cases. Injuries sustained in combat, catastrophic level, 5 times, all recovered. All returned to duty. Psychological evaluation shows subject maintains exceptional emotional control under extreme stress. Warning: subject exhibits predator class threat assessment capabilities. Recommend extreme caution in confrontational scenarios. Subject has demonstrated capacity for overwhelming force application when parameters are met. Known trigger: threats to non-combatants, especially children. There was a note in her psychological profile. I read it twice to make sure I understood it correctly. Oh no. 2? Victoria said. I slammed my hand on the emergency communication button. All units to Conference Hall Sigma immediately. We have a critical situation developing. I repeat, critical situation. My supervisor's voice crackled back. Trent, what is the nature of the emergency? Araxian commander just threatened a human child in front of a Wolfmark operator. Silence on the comm. Then, a what operator? Lokral glanced at him. I understand perfectly. Your species hides behind regulations and rules because you lack the strength to... Back in the conference room, Frederick Chen had stood up from his seat. Commander Thokral, I am begging you, step away from the child right now. You do not understand what you have done. Just get everyone here now. 1, Victoria said. Thokral finally seemed to notice that something was wrong. The other species delegates had cleared away from the area, pressing themselves against the walls. The Vraxian warriors had stopped clicking approval. Even they, dumb as rocks most of them, were starting to sense danger. His crest lowered slightly, confusion replacing arrogance. Something changed in her posture. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, But my security training finally kicked in and I recognized it. Weight distribution shift. Muscle tension optimization. Target acquisition stance. She was not making threats. She was counting down to execution. "What are you?" he asked, and for the first time, there was uncertainty in his voice. Victoria Kane smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of something that has teeth and knows how to use them. "I am what humanity sends when talking stops working," she said. Then she moved. "Look, I have watched a lot of security footage in my career. I have seen professional fighters, trained soldiers, even observed some of the galaxy's most dangerous predators in action. I thought I understood what combat looked like, what speed meant, what violence actually was. I understood nothing. One moment, Victoria was standing 5 meters away from Thok-Rao. The next moment, and I mean literally the next fraction of a second, she was inside his guard. My sensors could not even track the movement properly. The security camera footage showed a blur, then her fist connecting with his midsection. The sound was incredible. The sound of Victoria's fist hitting Thok-Rao's exoskeleton was like a hammer striking a gong. It echoed through the conference hall, through the corridor where I stood, probably through half the station. Thok-Rao, all 8 feet and 400 pounds of armored warrior, lifted off his feet, actually lifted. His body traveled backward through the air and hit the wall hard enough to leave a dent, an actual dent, in reinforced station bulkhead plating rated to withstand micrometeorite impacts. Thok-Rao slid down the wall, gasping for air. His exoskeleton, the thing that was supposed to be nearly impenetrable, had a cracked section right where Victoria had hit him. He looked down at it, then up at her, and his expression was pure disbelief. My jaw dropped. Literally dropped. I stood there with my mouth open like an idiot while alarms started going off. "Structural integrity warning," the system announced cheerfully. "Damage detected in conference hall Sigma." "Impossible," he wheezed. "Human strength cannot." Victoria was already moving toward the younglings. She gently ushered them toward their chaperone. Her movements suddenly soft again. "Careful. Get them out of here," she said quietly. "This is going to get messy." The chaperone did not need to be told twice. She grabbed all 3 younglings and practically ran for the exit. Smart woman. The other Vraxian warriors, all 6 of them, finally processed what had just happened to their commander. Their crests shot up in unison. Combat stance, aggressive posture, the whole intimidation package. They spread out, trying to surround Victoria, and I watched this happen while screaming into my comm unit for backup that was definitely not going to arrive in time. "You attack a Vraxian commander," one of them snarled. "You have violated every protocol. We are authorized to respond with lethal force." Victoria turned to face them, rolled her shoulders once, cracked her neck to one side, then the other. "Authorized?" she asked, and there was something almost amused in her voice. "Sure, go ahead. Try." They rushed her all at once. 6 Vraxian warriors, each one a veteran of multiple campaigns, each one capable of tearing through reinforced barriers with their bare hands. It should have been overwhelming. It should have been over in seconds. Victoria dropped low under the first warrior's swing, her movement so smooth it looked choreographed. She drove her palm upward into his chest joint, the weak point where exoskeleton plates met. He made a sound like air being let out of a pressurized container and collapsed. She used his falling body as a springboard, launching herself at the second warrior. Her elbow caught him in the throat with surgical precision. He went down gurgling. It was over in seconds. Just not the way anyone expected. The floor cracked under her feet when she landed. Actually cracked. The reinforced deck plating designed to support heavy equipment developed a spiderweb pattern of fractures radiating out from where she stood. Structural integrity at 87%, my console informed me helpfully. The third warrior tried to grab her from behind. Big mistake. She twisted in a way that should not have been anatomically possible, broke his grip like it was made of paper, and threw him. A 400-pound warrior went sailing through the air and crashed into the conference table, which exploded into fragments of composite material. The emergency containment shields flickered on, trying to protect the con observation windows. The fourth and fifth warriors attacked together, coordinated professional. Victoria blocked the first strike, redirected it into the second attacker, then swept both their legs out from under them, with a single spinning kick that generated enough force to send them sliding across the floor and into the far wall. More cracks appeared. More alarms went off. Structural integrity at 72%. The sixth warrior, slightly smarter than his companions, had backed away and was reaching for his communicator, probably trying to call for reinforcements. Victoria covered the distance between them in 3 strides. 3. She grabbed his wrist, applied some kind of leverage hold, and the communicator went flying. Then she struck him once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Clinical, efficient. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Thokral had recovered enough to stand. He charged at her with a roar that shook the walls, both arms raised to bring down a crushing blow. Victoria did not dodge. She stepped into the attack, caught both his arms at the wrists, and stopped his momentum dead. They stood there for a moment, locked in a contest of pure strength. Then Victoria started pushing back. Thokral's eyes went wide. His feet began sliding backward on the cracked deck plating. He was losing. A human, a species everyone said was weak and fragile, was overpowering a Vraxian warrior in a direct strength contest. The look on his face was something between horror and existential crisis. "Ow!" he gasped. The fight had lasted maybe 40 seconds. Victoria twisted sharply, used his own mass against him, and threw him across the room. He hit the wall again, in almost the same spot as before, and this time the dent was deeper. Structural support beam compromised. My console warned, recommend immediate evacuation. All 7 Vraxian warriors were down. Some unconscious, some conscious, but clearly not interested in continuing the fight. All of them damaged in ways that would require serious medical attention. Victoria stood in the center of the destroyed conference hall, surrounded by cracked floors, dented walls, broken furniture, and groaning warriors. Her breathing was slightly elevated, slightly, like she had just finished a light jog instead of dismantling 7 trained killers with her bare hands. She straightened her shirt collar, brushed some dust off her shoulder, and looked directly at the security camera. Sorry about the mess," she said calmly. "Send the repair bill to the Human Diplomatic Fund." I just stared at the screen, unable to form words. Station Commander Velrith arrived approximately 90 seconds later with a full security team, medical personnel, and what I can only describe as an expression of profound confusion. Velrith was a Korthan, which meant she had 4 eyes, all of which were currently trying to process the disaster zone that used to be Conference Hall Sigma. What in the actual frozen void of space were humans? "Someone explain," she said slowly, her translator struggling to convey the mix of anger and bewilderment in her voice. "Explain right now what happened to my station." Victoria had already walked back to her seat, picked up her jacket and put it back on. She sat down, folded her hands on the remains of the conference table, and returned to her previous quiet, neutral expression, like nothing had happened, like she had not just redecorated an entire room using Vraxian warriors as paint. Frederick Chen stepped forward, and to his credit, he managed to keep his voice steady. "Commander Velrith, there was a diplomatic incident. Commander Thokral violated multiple protocols, initiated physical contact without consent, and threatened a minor. Delegate Kane responded appropriately." Velrith's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Appropriately. There are 7 injured warriors, approximately 40,000 credits in structural damage, and my sensors detected what they classified as seismic activity." Seismic activity. On a space station. "Yes," Frederick said. "Appropriately. Cracked exoskeleton, 3 fractured ribs, severe bruising to internal organs, possible concussion," the medic reported. "What hit him?" "A cargo loader." Medical teams were loading the Vraxian warriors onto transport gurneys. Thokral was conscious, but looked like he was reconsidering every life choice that had led him to this moment. One of the medics, a Silurian with 6 manipulator arms, scanned him and made a concerned whistling sound. "A human," I said. finally finding my voice. The medic's head rotated to look at me. That is not funny. Krent, I am not joking. Valrith turned to the human delegation. I need a full explanation, now, before I have to report this to the Council and start an interstellar incident. Lisa Park pulled out a datapad and brought up a file. Commander, are you familiar with human military structure? Broadly, you have defense forces, like most species. Valrith scrolled through the file, her eyes getting progressively wider. This says acceptance rate is 0.03%. Yes, but we also have specialized units. Very specialized. Wolf Mark is one of them. Lisa turned the pad so Valrith could see. They are our Tier 1 operators, the best of the best. When we need someone extracted from a hostile war zone, we send Wolf Mark. When we need a facility infiltrated behind enemy lines, we send Wolf Mark. When we need a problem solved that conventional forces cannot handle, we send Wolf Mark. Correct. This says they have successfully completed missions against species with 3 times human strength ratings. Also correct. This says they train in environments designed to kill them. Frederick nodded. Commander, you need to understand something about humans. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We do not have natural armor or weapons, but we have stubbornness, adaptability, and the capacity to become very, very good at violence when we need to be. Wolf Mark represents the peak of that capacity. Valrith looked at Victoria, who was still sitting quietly, looking for all the world like a perfectly normal, harmless diplomat. She does not look like a weapon. That is the point, Lisa said. Wolf Mark operators often work undercover in diplomatic roles, as attachés and advisors. They blend in, right up until they do not need to anymore. One of the other delegates, a Fenari with luminescent skin, spoke up nervously. Will she face charges for the violence? Frederick actually laughed. On what grounds? Commander Thukral initiated physical contact, escalated the confrontation, and threatened a child. Station protocols explicitly allow for defense of minors using reasonable force. The Council's own regulations support Delegate Kane's actions. Reasonable? Valrith gestured at the destroyed room. You call this reasonable? She did not kill anyone, Frederick pointed out. She could have, easily. Instead, she exercised restraint, used non-lethal techniques, and ensured the safety of all non-combatants. By Wolf Mark standards, this was gentle. That word hung in the air. Gentle. I looked at the cracked floors, the dented walls, the groaning Vraxian warriors being carted away on medical gurneys. This was gentle. Valrith was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to me. Krent, seal this room as a restricted zone until repairs are completed, and update the security database. I want flags on all human military personnel, especially special operations. Big flags. Flags I cannot miss. Yes, Commander, I said immediately. She looked back at Victoria. Delegate Kane, you are confined to diplomatic quarters pending a full council review. Victoria nodded once. Understood, Commander. Her voice was still calm, still quiet, like being confined to quarters was a minor inconvenience rather than potential criminal charges. As she stood to leave with her security escort, she walked past Thokral, who was conscious enough to watch her approach. She paused, looked down at him, and spoke softly enough that only he and my very good security microphones could hear. Next time, pick on someone your own size, she said. Or better yet, do not pick on anyone at all. Then she left. Jacket perfectly arranged, posture perfect, expression neutral. 3 days later, the council held their review. I was required to testify, which meant standing in front of representatives from 40 different species and explaining how a single unarmed human had demolished 7 Vraxian warriors and caused structural damage to a reinforced space station. Fun times. Thokral stared at the ceiling and said something in his native language that my translator refused to process but probably translated to several very creative curses. The verdict came back unanimous. No charges filed. Thokral was censured for protocol violations, stripped of his diplomatic credentials, and sent back to Vraxian space in disgrace. The Vraxian High Command issued a formal apology, which apparently almost never happens, and agreed to pay for all station repairs. They also, and this part made me laugh, requested detailed information about human special operations training programs. For educational purposes, they said, right, educational purposes. Victoria Kane was released from quarters restriction after 18 hours. The council decided that her response fell well within acceptable parameters for defending a minor from a credible threat. Several representatives actually commended her restraint. Restraint. The word kept coming up. Apparently, from a Wolf Mark operator perspective, only putting 7 warriors in medical care instead of the morgue counted as holding back. I ran into her in the station commissary 2 days after the hearing. She was sitting alone at a corner table, reading something on a datapad, drinking what humans call coffee. I hesitated, then figured what the hell. I had already survived one near-death experience this week, and approached her table. "Delegate Kane," I said. "May I sit?" She looked up, and for half a second I tensed, some primal part of my brain remembering what those hands could do, but she just nodded and gestured to the empty seat. "Sure, call me Victoria. What lesson is that?" Victoria shook her head. "You were doing your job. Nothing in my diplomatic credentials suggested a problem. That is how it is supposed to work." She took a sip of her coffee. "Besides, if you had flagged it, Okral might have behaved differently. Might not have learned an important lesson." I sat down carefully, like I was diffusing an explosive device. Which, in a way, I guess I was. I wanted to apologize. I should have checked your background more thoroughly when you arrived. Should have flagged the security concerns earlier. "Do not threaten children," she said it simply, matter-of-factly, like she was stating a law of physics. "Anywhere, ever, but especially not in front of someone whose entire purpose is protecting people who cannot protect themselves." I thought about that. Is that what Wolfmark does? Protection? Among other things. She set down her cup. "Look, Krent, humans are not strong by galactic standards. We know this. But we are very, very good at becoming what we need to be. Some of us become diplomats, scientists, engineers. Some of us become something else, something harder. We do it so the diplomats and scientists and engineers can do their jobs safely." Victoria smiled slightly. "Old Earth legend. Wolves protect the pack. They hunt together, fight together, die together if necessary. The howl means the pack is together. That help is coming, that you are not alone." She tapped her shoulder where the tattoo sat hidden under her jacket. "It is a promise, to the people we protect and to each other. When the wolf howls, the pack answers." "A tattoo on your shoulder," I said. "The wolf howling. What does it mean?" A chill ran down my back. Not from fear, exactly. From understanding. Humans had looked at a galaxy full of bigger, stronger, more dangerous species, and decided that they would become the thing that scared the things that scared them. They had weaponized themselves through sheer determination. "The galaxy is going to have to recalibrate how it thinks about your species," I said. "Maybe." Victoria picked up her datapad again. "Or maybe people will just remember to be polite. Either way works." I left her there, reading peacefully, drinking her coffee, looking completely ordinary. Just another diplomat, doing paperwork. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to fear. I filed my final report that evening, updated all the security protocols, made sure every single human delegate got a thorough background check, especially looking for military service. Discovered that 3 other humans on the station had special operations backgrounds. They had been here the whole time, quiet, professional, polite, invisible until they needed not to be. Except now I knew better. The next morning, I saw Victoria in the corridor. She had her jacket on, her bag over one shoulder, heading toward the landing platforms. Apparently, the human delegation was rotating out, mission complete. She nodded at me as she passed. I nodded back just before she reached the airlock. I called out, "Victoria!" She turned. "Thank you," I said, "for the restraint." She smiled, that not quite nice smile again. "Any time, Krent. Stay safe." I went back to my post at landing platform 7. Scanned incoming vessels for contraband. Found some illegal fruits. Logged a few quarantine violations. Boring. Safe. Predictable. Then she was gone, boarding her transport, heading back to wherever humans kept their wolves between deployments. But now, every time a human delegation arrived, I paid attention. Really paid attention. Checked backgrounds thoroughly. Looked for the quiet ones standing at the back of the group. Watched for tattoos hidden under collars and jackets. Because I learned something important that week. Humans might be small. They might be soft. They might lack natural weapons and armor. But somewhere among them, hidden in plain sight, are wolves. And wolves, as it turns out, have very sharp teeth.